Spring has really kicked in. We've had a couple of warm fronts come through, along with some birds. We've had a handful of warblers, but they're not singing, so they're often hard to find. We also had the Kirkland Bird Club come through for a tour. We did have a decent list. I didn't see it, but probably about 40 species or so. But the tour turned into a bit of a plant tour. The leaves are starting to bud out of the trees, and we have all of our earliest woodland blooms showing. We've also been seeing red Fs out on the woodland trails. There's also been a lot of insect activity, which is great, except for the ticks and mosquitoes. I did a little pond study this week, observing the various fish species and amphibians in Wicks Pond, and had some excitement off-site. We picked up our 700 trees this week and have begun planting, and yes, that is Lydia sitting on the brand new nest that we built for her. This kingfisher is stalking Wicks Pond, but it's not the only predator around. The pond is full of hundreds of these whirligig beetles. These beetles noticeably spend most of their time swimming in circles on the pond's surface. They do, however, dive down in search of food, breathing from an air bubble they trap beneath their wings. Both larvae and adults are predators, eating food probably too small for us to see. They are not aimlessly swimming in circles. They have a method to their madness. Hungry whirligigs tend to stick to the outside of the congregation, where it's easier to hunt for food, while those that are filled up stay closer to the middle, where it is safer from predators. It is also said that there's a dominance hierarchy, where the most dominant gets the most choice spot. I do wonder where they spend their winters. Do they bury themselves in the mud and hibernate? Does the cold kill all of the adults? Or do they use their strong flying abilities to migrate south to open waters? This predator, lurking below the surface of the pond, the eastern spotted newt, does spend its winter in the pond. In fact, it can spend its entire adult life, 10 years or more, never leaving this pond. And although they look slow and casual most of the time, they can dart with great speed after their prey. Then there are the minnows in our pond, most of which are omnivores, but they do hunt. And it doesn't take watching them long on a sunny day to realize why many are named shiners. There are dozens of minnow species in our region, many difficult to distinguish from one another. Most are of similar size and shape, and many even have that dark lateral band. Judging by the habitat, the clear but standing weedy water, I'm guessing it's the black-chinned shiner. I may set a trap at some point to look more closely at them. But regardless of what species they are, it's most likely what the kingfisher was here for. With all of the birds migrating through, not to mention the spring peepers awakening, the Utica marsh has been a lively place to be. The muskrats are certainly enjoying the spring. Not sure if it's the male or female on top, but its mate is definitely underneath it. You can see the legs and tail kicking up. This session was going off and on for the duration of the evening. And here, it seems that the muskrat's being taken for a ride. And of course, evening is a fine time to dine.
Did you get that?
No, Kristen, I missed it. And I was certainly cursing that telephone pole. Nonetheless, it was still an incredible show. But the eagle couldn't quite enjoy his meal. He had to be on the lookout for that osprey hovering overhead. And after the eagle finally finished his meal, he soared away without a peep. I left town with my family for a few days for a tropical getaway in Key Largo, Florida. But it's not all Jimmy Buffett and Margaritaville down there. There's plenty of natural wonders for the naturalists to indulge in.
Might be. Can't really
Very
see.
noticeably is the abundance of green iguanas.
Oh, is it?
Last time I was here, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, there were none. Now they're everywhere. They are native to Central and South America and were introduced into the Miami area. Since then, they have been steadily expanding their range outward. The locals I talked to were not fond of them. They deemed them a nuisance, defecating everywhere and getting into the gardens. They are mostly herbivorous, but their mouths, claws, and tails can be formidable weapons.
I think so. I think he's eating clovers.
Another non-native, although a little bit more shy, are these curly-tailed lizards. A very common native throughout much of the state are the anoles, sometimes called Florida chameleons. They are very generalized in the habitat they prefer, as long as there's brush and shrubby undergrowth for them to hide and forage for insects in. They seem to thrive. There are about half a dozen species native to Florida, and others have been introduced. If you watch long enough, it's likely that you'll see the male displaying in his territory with his bright red throat fan. Even with all the excitement on land, there's even more to look at in the water. If you look closely in the harbor, you might find these Cassiopeia jellyfish.
Jellyfish swimming there too.
There's also plenty of nurse sharks swimming up and down the harbor, and it's no wonder why. They are waiting for the fishermen to come in and clean their catches so they can eat from the discarded scraps. Manatees are always a treat to see. These gentle giants seem to spend their entire day lackadaisically cruising up and down the harbor. They move so slowly that many of them get barnacles growing on their back. Unfortunately, their curiosity often renders them scars from boat propellers. The reason most people come to Key Largo, including ourselves, is for snorkeling at the John Pennicamp Coral Reef State Park. It is our nation's first underwater state park and holds an area of about 70 nautical square miles. Within this park is an incredible amount of biodiversity.